you're excused. 'Cause you're always late, overweight, and totally rude, honey.
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome to podcast number 7.
Wow.
Very exciting.
We have our special guest, Robert Grasmere, who's like a real creative guy who's, he's very modest, but if you looked at his resume, he's been a special effects or a second unit director on some of the most major films ever, like Clear and Present Danger, Salt.
Mothman Prophecies.
Huh? What are some of them that you've done, Robert? The more
it's
Yeah, it's
too long and
embarrassing.
boring to get into. Let's start with Running Man with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, it's cool.
Okay. Yeah, Running Man. And what this podcast is about, Robert, is there's it's really to help young people through that gap. You know, like they start school, and if they're ADD or dyslexic, they have really a difficult time. It doesn't matter. They still got to graduate. You still got to go to film school if you're going to get into what you do. You've got to do these things that a lot of kids, if they get shamed or they lose their confidence, they quit. And a lot of people have never really experienced their creativity because they get stomped, by life. So that's what this is about. It's kind of sharing how we've all kind of done it. And the only one who's like kind of younger, the one that hasn't done it yet, is Rebecca. Yet she's super creative, and she's in college, and she's experiencing the same things that we did when we were in college and high school. So nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. They always say, "Oh, we're really going to make a difference for people that are dyslexic and ADD," and they don't. Unless you're super
Absolutely.
rich.
I was looking up the history of the term dyslexia because I kind of figured since clearly in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, people were being abused that were dyslexic, that had any kind of ADD or dyslexia or any of those related things. And I looked it up, and the term was common in the late 1800s.
No way.
Yeah.
1800s? All the way back then?
Yeah.
Oh my God. They never mention it. You'll never hear about dyslexics in history class.
Yeah.
No.
So, and then, there was something like in the 1930s, there was these programs that were going to help people with this thing. And I thought, well, they sure didn't work because we're now in the 2021, and now it's common terminology, but very uncommon help.
Yeah.
Because now everybody's got like something. Everybody's ADD, everybody's ADHD, everybody's dyslexic, but nobody's really figuring out how to make that work. I have a really dear friend named Mark. He can't spell and pronounce words worth a darn. My wife, Jennifer, she cannot spell. She's pretty good at pronouncing, but she really struggles with all that. So she runs an Instagram site selling amazingly artistic jewelry. And so many times people will write to her and say, "I like the piece, but you spelled the word turquoise wrong."
Oh my God.
And she's like, "Oh my God, I just really don't need that kind of criticism. It's a stone, you know what it is. Is spelling it really like your job to be the spelling police still in 2021?
Wow.
They're probably just jealous that they can't make their own jewelry, so they have to focus on her one tiny mistake.
Yeah.
Farmers do. They shame.
What it does is it resonates to all that stuff in your upbringing that you've never been able to get rid of, and it makes you feel bad. And people should stop doing it.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think there's power in numbers. That's partly, I think, the purpose of this is to seek out like-minded, creatives that feel unworthy, and most of the time creative people definitely feel unworthy. That's like their thing, our thing. I have several reasons why I think we have that, but we'll get into that another time. What were you saying, Dad? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I was just going to ask Robert, have you ever felt unworthy?
It's easier to say, have I ever felt worthy?
Yeah.
I mean, there was a day in the late 70s I felt worthy for a couple hours, and let's see. No, not many other times. You know, maybe a couple times.
Isn't that
but
interesting?
certainly-
I mean, isn't that crazy? You know?
Well, I mean, I'm not dyslexic. I'm probably the least dyslexic person that I know,
Mhm.
because I mean, I'm imbued with like an automatic GPS system in my brain. Right and left is a big thing, but ADD, I'm probably off the charts.
You're way off. I'm afraid to drive with you anywhere.
Yeah,
When you go with Robert driving, he's texting, emailing, and not even watching the road. He's
yeah.
driving.
So as
Oh my
far
gosh.
it's funny because I'm like an ultra ADD person who can ADD my way right and left perfectly well, and spell amazingly well, and
Yeah.
pronounce words perfectly. And I can do all that while changing subjects like 200 times a minute. And my whole life, people would say to me, wait a minute, I asked you that question like 5 minutes ago and you just answered it. I said, really? Because like in those intermeeting five minutes, I forgot to say, I'm thinking about your question.
Yeah.
I made up the answer in my head 5 minutes earlier, and then I thought about a lot of other things, and then I finally got around to saying it. But I never even realized that I hadn't said anything 5 minutes ago, and they're going like, this guy's like ignoring me.
Or worse.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
worse.
And one of the things that Robert and I co-write screenplays, and
Wow.
and one of the things that you get, and actually we've sold one of the screenplays, which puts us in a like a 1% level. Most people that even write them never even get some, let alone get them made or anything like that. But one of the things that happens is when the studio buys it or whatever, they come back with a series of notes, and I hate the notes. Matter of fact, when I read them, like there's been times that I quit talking to Robert for like almost 6 months or a year at a time in between the notes as I heal myself. I'm the rejection of, because what the notes to me are like a rejection of everything that I've done, and to him, they're just left or right. They're right. They don't affect you the same way they do me.
Yeah, but I think I avoid them pretty much the same way.
Yeah, and I
I
was
hate doing them because it's kind of like, it's like homework.
Yeah, nobody likes notes. You're not alone on that, for
And
sure.
my hero, the guy that wrote Blake Snyder, who's dead, passed away a few years ago, but he wrote Save the Cat. He has a whole thing about notes that he won't read them. He wouldn't read. What he would do is he would tell the people that he'd be at the studio to look to talk them out. He wanted to hear them, not because people have a tendency when they write something down, it seems highly critical, and that's just the way people will write things. And
Yeah, the tone gets lost. Same with texting. Some
Yeah, well,
conversations you can't do via text.
oh my God,
safely.
no.
Yeah.
Because
That's
there's
true.
that human that there's nuances when like when if I would say, well, like when Robert and I are doing when we're talking about characters, it's fun. I have so much fun doing that, and oh yeah, listening. But then when he sends me the notes, I'm like, I'm confused. It's just
Interesting.
it's
I wonder
difficult.
if maybe you should have the notes read back to you via your diction thing on your computer, if that would help cut the tension a little bit.
Well,
Or
no,
maybe just audio notes instead.
the more I'm aware of it, it doesn't, doesn't seem to bother me as much, because this is when I wasn't aware of it. And frankly, what happens for those of us that are dyslexic and grew up with all that crap, we go into what John Fox, our hero, would call a trance,
Shame
a dumb
trance.
trance. And I go into a dumb trance. So, I read these things and then I'm just like,
Interesting.
Well, that's a good point, because the project that Larry's talking about, we got notes on a couple times, and
tell them what I did.
and well, we haven't really addressed the notes yet, but I got a bunch of notes from a very successful producer, and he did an incredible job. I mean, this guy is so unlike me. He's so detailed. Like, he literally went by the page and
Wow.
said what pages to cut and everything. But I was completely overwhelmed by his notes. I'll call back later. So the points you just brought up are actually really good, because this is what we did. Like, I really didn't feel like I could just take this 11-page document of notes and work on it. So what I did was I invited him up to my house for the afternoon. I promised that I'd cook him dinner and have a barbecue, sit by the fire pit, drink some wine, but he had to come up 2 hours early and talk me through his notes.
Wow. I told him that.
That makes a lot of sense.
And what I found out was he wrote everything down in the world. And I was like getting stuck on these little details, like, this doesn't make sense, because why would this character be here? And I thought, I have to fix that, and I have to fix that, and I have to fix this.
Mm-hmm.
But he basically said, look, you don't have to fix everything. I just wrote them down in case they inspire you. But the bottom line is, it's a comedy. You need to take out 20 pages. The adult scenes are boring. Start with them. And then here's a scene where it's a 4-page action scene, but it really doesn't need to be 4 pages. You're going to get it in 2 pages. So really, there was like the grueling detail part of the notes and the actually fairly easier one, because it's pretty easy to go through and cut stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so his thing was just get started cutting. But the bottom line was, until we had a verbal discussion where he interpreted his own notes, it was really hard to do, which is exactly what you were talking about before, which is sometimes getting a written list becomes like that odious homework assignment about what happened exactly during the 100 Years' War between England and France and in what order.
Yeah.
When, like, really, who cares, you know?
Yeah.
What you really need to know is that England and France didn't get along, and that blah, 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 you know, some of the bigger points of what happened.
Well,
That happens a lot of that happens with at my work all the time. Notes. I found it helpful.
Hang on a sec. I'm gonna go mute for a second.
Wait. Hey, we're back.
Okay. So I was gonna say, in my post-production work, the note process, in order to simplify it for the editors, we kind of interpret the notes because we're listening to the boss tell them straight to us, so we can interpret the tone and stuff. So I'll put like, this one is for sure you have to do this one. This one, see if you can. If not, like, I give him, I like decode the notes for them, and that helps a lot, because otherwise, like you were saying, Dad, the wheels start spinning, and like you were saying, Robert, I gotta get to this note no matter what. And sometimes the boss is like, if you can, see what you can do, but when it's written down, it looks more impending. So I go ahead and make a little
that's great.
meter.
It's also smart too, because then he's like, oh, I thought I told you guys to do this and this and this, and it wasn't written down, so nobody remembered.
I go so far as to record in the room as I'm writing as well, just in case.
Yeah.
because you can only write so fast.
Let me,
Yeah.
let me tell you what happens when, like, for myself, with this whole note thing. I took a class years ago. It was novels in progress, and in that class was 20 people, and every week we would give 10 pages, and everybody had to read it, and then they would make they would write comments. So as soon as I would get my comments, I would read them. I would only focus on all the negative comments.
Of course.
Never paid any, couldn't listen to the positive.
Yeah.
Then I would make every single change to my novel based on the negative comments, and I would bring it back, and then I would read it, and then people go like, "Why did you change that? Why did you get rid of it? I didn't mean for you to get." And it was like so confusing for me. I had to quit doing that. I had to quit that kind of a class because I listened to everybody's notes as they're smarter. This is, they're worthy. I'm not. They know something I don't know, even though they may not. And I used to, I've got so many versions of some stuff I just had to give up.
Yeah, it can be maddening if you don't have a clear understanding of what exactly out of those notes do they need. And I think having them present, like Robert did, it takes the communication gap closes because you're face to face, you can hear the tone, and they can explain themselves. And sometimes it's good to let them go in circles so they can hear how ridiculous a certain note is. Sometimes it's a very interesting process.
Also, just like just like criticism in general is kind of hard to take after you've been working on something for a really long time and you're proud of it and you want to show people, and the first thing they say is, "Oh, his chin doesn't look right. Did you need to make his face that long?" Or, "Oh, why did you misspell this XYZ and all that?" And I'm not in the professional field yet, but I mostly get criticism back from my friends and family. And I always kind of have a rule that if I didn't ask yet, I don't want to know. But I will ask. I mean, like, eventually after. But because sometimes you don't want to, I don't know, you got to brace yourself. You don't want to exactly hear it at this moment, or it's going to ruin the steam you have making whatever you're going to make. Whether it's like painting or writing.
And the bad news is you will get notes.
Yeah, the rule doesn't stop them. The first thing that comes out of anybody's mouth when they look over your shoulder, "Ooh, is that done?"
Just because you get notes does not mean you have to take them.
Yeah.
You can appreciate them and you can acknowledge them. But if it's truly something you created, it's your baby, it's a lot easier to dismiss other people's notes. Whereas when we're working on a production with hundreds of people, it's almost impossible to not get notes because there's so many cooks in the kitchen, so to speak.
Yeah, there's occupations that are note oriented. Like the film business is it's not a democracy, and it's not an auteur. Like they used to talk about the auteur directors, but film is a big collaboration with 1 million people telling you what something should be. And if you want to be in that, you kind of got to go with that flow.
Yeah.
Like that's the game. If you don't want to, you should be a novelist, because nobody can tell you what you want to write. And maybe you'll send it to your editor, and maybe the public will tell you whether they like it or not.
Well, they'll tell you.
So you better be ready for that.
Yeah.
But during the process, you're not going to have this whole review process where everyone gets to put not everyone. I mean, in film, it all depends on what area you're in. But as a writer, for example, everyone in the above the line weighs in. Everyone, the producers weigh in. If you're not the director weighs in. Then the actors weigh in. The studio weighs in. The distributor weighs in.
The salespeople weigh in.
It's maddening sometimes.
Yeah, but that's what that is, and it's really good to acknowledge that and not fight that. I mean, I had a negative experience with a writing partner before Larry, who we got a bunch of notes on a project we didn't really like. We didn't like the project, and we didn't like the notes,
Oh my
but
God.
we were being paid to write it. And so we get all these notes, and I'm like, well, the producer called us up and said, come in, I want to discuss, the changes I want. And the changes were so unbelievably stupid that you really wanted to hurl. I mean, it was like, we just really want a talking donkey in this scene. It's like, what? You want a talking donkey, like out of the blue in the scene? Yeah. So my writing partner at the time said, I'm not going. I'm not going to the meeting. Those are stupid notes. I'm not doing them. And I'm like, you're getting paid to do them. You have to do them. Well, we got fired off that project because of that.
Mm.
And we lost a lot of money because that was the game. I mean, that's how you have to play that. And it was a really tragic mistake that my then writing partner made. And it wasn't one that was recoverable from.
Yeah. Well, this is the value of experience, and one of the reasons that kind of motivated me to start this little podcast thing is I was working individually with Rebecca, and I could see nothing has changed. And like you and I and Kristen, we all have, you have experience, and so you start to develop a set of rules, and like and a set of events that seem to happen. Like I'll notice when I was ghostwriting, I could count on within the first week we're going to come to blows about my fees. I would knew that was going to happen, even though they would say, oh yeah, I understand. As soon as it came to writing a check. And so what I did was I set up a set of rules that I don't write until I get paid. And I would just like have to bite. It was different than what you're talking about, Robert. This was, somebody wanted to write their own book, and I'm a ghostwriter. So one of the things I found, like writers will write 300 pages and never get paid. And if the guy doesn't want to pay you, you're screwed. There's nothing you can do. So you've got to develop either a contract or like I developed like a payment schedule so the person didn't feel like they were getting ripped off, but I had to be paid all along the way. And so I just, you develop things that work. And they're not taught, and a lot of these things they're not taught in writing schools. In writing schools, they just teach you how to win contests. It seems like.
Well, that's good advice though, because you need to develop a system, because anytime, if you're coming from that dyslexia, ADD universe, and at the bottom of it, you've been made to feel unworthy, which is what you're talking about in the beginning.
Yeah.
If somebody says, well, I don't really want to pay you, it's going to trigger, well, I'm not worthy anyway, so it's okay. Write me a check like next month. I'll write 3,000 words and
you'll discount your fees.
Yeah.
Just pay me half. Just pay me half. Pay me what you think that's worth. Never.
Yeah, so making real world suggestion, that's a good one, because you come up with a system so that when you get into that shame trance of I'm not worthy about the money, you lean back on the list of rules that you set up.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can never think in the moment. You're always going to say, oh yeah, it's okay, you don't have to pay me.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yep.
I one time I spoke at the Santa Barbara Writers Conference, and that's kind of a big deal, Santa Barbara Writers. I thought, well, this is great. And I was talking about how to get published. And every person that was in there they all had written a novel for their first get-go. And they couldn't figure out how come it wasn't published. And basically what I was saying was, you start with an article, or you start with a short story. Like I want to get a lot of little wins. So I used to write a bunch of articles and they would get published. Well, that's a win. Oh, good. I feel, some kind of building up my self-esteem. A win, a win, a win. And then I would take one of the article, and literally every single book I've ever written had a preceding article. And then that article became the book proposal. And then the article became chapter 1. So the article always had a place, but the article was sort of proof, and it gave me that confidence to get to 300 pages. Because for me to write a 300-page book, I write it 3 or 4 times, 2 or 3 times at least. It's over, the mistakes and every other kind of thing. So you've got to have those little wins. Rebecca had a little win. She's being published, or one of her poems is being published.
Yeah.
She doesn't think it's a big deal. I think
it's a poem. It's not a.
I think it's an enormous deal, because every single thing I've done is this starts with the one poem or the one article. It's a big deal.
Well, yeah. I mean, I like the poem. It was cool, but
you don't realize how difficult, how many people got a published poem. I don't know very few people.
Yeah, that is good.
Oh, thank you.
So
I'll make a poem book. How about that?
Oh, really?
Like Edgar Allan Poe, the next one. Cat Ear Allan Poe.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
You see, if you don't build your confidence up along the way, you never start. Usually people won't even start things. Or even like if I go back to all of these people that were in this class, and I can't tell you how many times when I've given a lot of classes on how to get published. And what people, they don't really want to be writers. What I've discovered is they just want to be published. They want a book they want to be able to say to their friends, I got a novel published. And it's amazing. I mean, they don't enjoy, I don't know if they never talk about enjoying the process, but it was like I was there talking to a group. It's like I was from Mars and they were from Venus. It was really, really strange. And they could not understand what I was saying. That why not, maybe you could try like lower your expectations, get some wins on the board. No, I want to get, it was strange.
I want to do it perfect the first time, damn it.
I had,
Something.
and I've had people I used to live in Ojai, and I thought, well, I'll start a writers group. And I started this writers group, and I was writing about just something that was about like Indians that were shapeshifters. Suddenly I get from one of the women in the group, her attorney sent me a cease and desist letter that I was taking something that she had written. She was, I was like, what is she talking about? But she was writing a story about a shapeshifter, which has been done a million times,
Yeah, you don't own shapeshifters as a concept.
But she didn't know, so she sent it to her attorney. Anyway, the story goes, a year later, I saw a woman who knew her, and I said, well, how's her novel? And she goes, what? What? She doesn't have any novel. She doesn't even write anymore. And I said, what? And I found out she couldn't even remember writing anything. It was like, it was just, as people, it's like they have a brain fart, I'm going to be a writer. I want to get a published novel. Everybody tells me that I'm such a great, you've got a story to tell. No, you don't. If you can't sell it, and lots of times they don't even have a story there. It's just some goofy thing.
Well, they want to be authors. They don't want to be writers.
Exactly. They want to be authors and be able to tell their friends.
Well, then they should hire you to ghostwrite their book for them. Hello.
So anyway, I'm going back to this woman. Part of her story was she had a nuclear bomb go off in Los Angeles. And then she's back in Ojai, and they're going about their daily life. And I went nuts. I went like, wait a minute. You're going about your daily life, and we just lost 20 million people, 100 miles away. I mean, that's ridiculous. Of course, that's probably what started her, feud with me. But it was like,
hopefully she's not listening to this.
Yeah.
I don't know. She's not writing anymore. She doesn't even care. But it's so amazing,
Well, same. I mean, that happens all over the place. Musicians.
Oh yeah.
You,
Well,
you stole that lyric from me, or that assembly of beats. How dare you?
Not like every song has basically kind of like the gist if you're in a genre of
There's
sound.
only so many combinations you can do.
Yeah,
well,
like
here's
Jimmy
one
Page
thing.
and Led Zeppelin.
Hmm?
He's famous for having stolen almost every single hit they ever made.
Are you serious?
Yeah, to the point where, I mean, it's been borne out in court. And the
Oh,
thing was, he stole them from like poor black uh, blues writers. Look up, Jimmy Page and stealing other people's songs. Like sometimes he kept the name and the lyrics and just wrote "written by Jimmy Page"
oh my
when it
gosh.
was
my
actually written by
God.
John Lee Hooker or somebody.
Wow.
I mean, it's so blatant, it's incredible.
Well,
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot that we don't have any clue about how much that goes on.
But anyway, we diverged
Yeah.
into stealing people's stuff. But Rebecca, what's the podcast about?
Oh, being creatively unworthy. Like what we tried to introduce to you in the beginning, but we kind of,
Yeah,
yeah. I think Claire did a pretty good job at it. It's
well,
kind of,
that subject works for everything we're talking about.
it does
yeah.
everything we're talking.
Yeah.
And actually today, one of the topics I wanted to introduce is something I heard Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, say.
Who?
Elizabeth Gilbert, she wrote Eat, Pray, Love. And
Okay.
major,
Wait, sorry not to interrupt you. The Zoom meeting says we only have like a couple minutes left, so we'll probably have to stop and restart in a little bit because it only wants to let us record
Oh,
for 40 minutes without buying their
I can do the
premium plan.
second half if you need.
okay.
Yeah, well,
Go
just
give me a
like in a
signal.
minute, if
Quick
it
yes or
cancels, that's what's happening. I didn't end the call on everybody.
Okay. You want to go ahead and do that
Yeah, we can do that
now?
now.
Yeah.
We're recording again.
So why don't we take it from Robert asking you what the podcast is? Go ahead and give us that little, and Jed, jump in if you want.
Wait a minute. Okay, wait a
Yeah.
minute. Let me get the thing I wrote down somewhere. Because it makes more sense. Okay, so here's the problem. If you're a creative person, you need time to develop your talent. You need emotional support to get through difficult periods. You need a pathway to follow and a vocabulary that speaks to you. So it's kind of like that's the setup of the problem. And so the podcast kind of answers those and other problems that come up.
For the
So
creatively unworthy.
yeah, for the creative unworthy.
Mhm.
One of the things, like I was just reading this, is this is thanks to the Colby, I use it's the Colby test that you can take online. It measures your cognitive, which is your, that's not like cognitive, it's cognitive, which is your instincts. And so those aren't going to change if you're 4 years old or you're 80 years old. You still, if you're right-handed, you're still going to eat with a fork, or you'll shave a certain way or comb your hair. You do these certain things. So it tests you. And I have my list of things. I probably can't see it, but I swear to God, every day I have to look at this, which sounds crazy, but it keeps me on track. I have everything ready before I begin a task, eliminate unnecessary information, put activities in time, give myself a deadline, make time to think, learn, and personal awareness, create an environment that nurtures me, seize the moment when an idea surfaces, skip from one thing to the next without finishing what you start. That's one of my rules, like Robert does that. And you can make yourself wrong about it if you don't have this one of your rules, so I allow myself to skip around. So in my environment, I have books that will have a project in it, and I'll just pick it up and I'll be working on that. And then ask others for support, which is what we're doing right now. And after working intensely on deadlines, take time to do nothing, which is the hardest thing there is for me to do, nothing.
And so it's basically a place where any type of creative person in any field or homemaker can come or listen, like, and they can write us questions or ask our advice on things, or give solutions to other creative people. Anything from setting personal boundaries to, you know, what the lists you look at in the morning to get you on the right track, and giving yourself
as long as it's not criticism, because then I'll personally have to go out and beat them up. They criticize us. I'm joking. I'm trying to joke. But one of the things to get Robert back into the game here a little bit is, for me, having somebody as a partner who actually can spell. It's just like, I mean, I have editors that help with books, but somebody who knows the game, who's in the game, his game, which is the whole movie industry, and so it's, to me, when we're working on something, it's like play. I don't know if you think of it that way, but
like salt and pepper, like you're the salt, he's the pepper.
Yeah, pretty
when
much.
you guys complete each other.
How
Yeah.
do you guys work on a creative project together? Like, I'm interested to know. Like, does one person write a chapter, the other person write a chapter? Does you guys kind of spitball ideas together, and then how does that process work?
You want to take a shot at that, Robert?
Varied depending on what we were working on. I mean, Larry's a very fervent imagination and great ideas, and comes up with these fantastic concepts. And so in one of them, you know, the very first thing we did together, he wrote like a whole screenplay, but he wasn't he'd never really written screenplays before, so it had a lot of room for molding it into the commercial needs of what a screenplay has to be for Hollywood, and, you know, organize characters, organize scenes, and just make it a more movie-friendly script. So I took an idea that he'd already fully fleshed out and then refleshed it out, and then, you know, submitted it back to him for his notes on what I had done. And it was a pretty different project by the time we were done. By the time it went through all those modifications, it was very different, and it was also very much the same. It was still the same guts of the story and the same guts of the character. So that one started with Larry, went to me, back to Larry, you know, back and forth. We even brought in a couple of other writers who were just good with dialogue polishing. Anyway, that was that one. And then the other thing we've been working on is more or less the same way, really.
Well, it's even more of a, like, I'll present like in this Stealing Mao screenplay. I went to Beijing, and I saw Mao Zedong in the casket, and every night his casket it's on display, but it's held down below at 30 feet in a climate controlled thing. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool? What would it be like if somebody stole his body, and, you know, up came the casket and he wasn't in there? It would just, the Chinese would freak out. That was the only idea I had. But even before that, when we were talking, Robert and I were talking about the highway, what's it called?
The Great Wall of China, or
no, the highway that the trading highway that's through.
The Silk Road.
The Silk Road, and this little story about how a like a silkworm fell into a cup, and this princess, that's how the whole thing of creating silk got started. That was kind of like the germination of that thing, and then evolved into the next thing, and then I'll just like start writing stuff in it, and then send it to Robert, and then he will go, he'll add his to, what about this, what about that, and I have to be careful not to overwrite stuff or take stuff and go off in a different direction. So that those are my little picadillos that I have to work on. But I think it works. The thing works great, especially if we end up selling something that gets made into a movie. That's really the goal. It's not just to write it, but we have an end goal for not just the one, but many other ones. And it works great for me because I've got I can I've got how do I say it? I've got like a conduit, and I can just put stuff, I don't even know quite how to say it, but it would be much more difficult if I was trying to do it on my own. I would be, out trying, Robert has connections, Robert has an agent, Robert is making movies. I don't have those connections. I'm an outsider, which is what most screenwriters that will try to write a screenplay are, and they might win a contest. That's what they usually default to. Is they try to get an agent. And of course they're not going to get an agent. That's like next. Why would an agent go with somebody who's unknown? It's very extremely rare that happens. They might get a manager or something. I mean, who knows? But I don't want to have to worry about that. So that's what Robert worries about. So when he's working on the screenplay, he's working at polishing it so he can sell it, so he can take it to his agent and sell it, and not be embarrassed, not.
Well, I also think I feel if you had to characterize it, Larry's like the wild, untamed, creative fireball kind of
The Energizer Bunny.
genius ideas, but untamed,
I can see that.
And I think what I'm really good at is
tamed
story and structure and character, and creating like a beautiful object out of this wild clay. And on top of that, just one thing, how that project you were talking about earlier came about. We were talking about something, and Larry was talking about ideas, and wouldn't it be funny if someone stole Mao Zedong? And I said, stealing Mao. I said, that's a title for a movie. We have to write a movie for that title. So the idea to create a screenplay came from an expression that came up when we were having drinks in the afternoon at his house, and those two words came up, stealing Mao, and I just said, movie. Let's come up with a movie that supports those two words, stealing Mao. And then he just started to go like,
got it.
Wow.
Well, I ended up in Mongolia. Went so far in China and Mongolia, and spending months and months researching.
You guys were together in Ojai when you came up.
Yeah.
Essentially with the seed of this whole idea. I did not know that. That's awesome.
Probably 7 years ago.
That's so exciting and inspiring. It makes me want to go grab the nearest creative person next to me and be like, come on, we gotta go.
Let's go have a drink and talk.
Well, it's funny because Larry, I'm more of the author than the writer. Larry's more of the writer than the author. Larry likes writing.
Yeah.
And I like structuring it and thinking and molding it and all that. But the actual sitting down, sorry, my window just slammed shut. The actual sitting down and writing, I'm like a cat. I circle for weeks, months, years.
Which drives me crazy.
Honestly, same. How many outlines have I sent you, Larry?
A lot, many.
Yeah. How many outlines have I written out?
None.
Zero? Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Don't be discouraged.
Yeah. I got some cool new ideas too, but
But see, I wanted you to see how how we work, how Kristen works, how Robert and I work.
it's
So
very interesting.
yeah, because then you'll start to develop your own what works. And
Yeah.
these aren't nobody teaches you this in school, I mean,
They didn't teach me this, not in
Yeah.
and
audiovisual class.
Kristen's really interesting because she's like the fixer, you know. She's got a different creative category. Is that right, Kristen Malcolm? Would I?
Sure. I'd like to think I'm a little bit of both,
Yeah.
just because I've had to be as a producer. You gotta.
You speak farmer and hunter, and you
Mhm.
you can have your foot in both. I speak hunter. Robert speaks farmer, and um, and that's great. And so that kind of a teamwork works, you know.
Yeah.
As
What
long as
Robert?
the hunter doesn't try to be the farmer, that's when I get in trouble. When I try to be the farmer, well, I mean the farmer, the guy that actually gets the fruit and put it on the truck and gets it sent to the store.
Well, neither of us are good at that.
Yeah.
Well, Robert and I worked together on a little project, and we were in the notes process. A lot of the time, they were pretty painless. Um, but he's good at communicating what he's hoping to see, and that's half the battle. It's like if you're a good note giver, then people are stoked to address your notes. Like they're not shame-filled notes. Like how come you're such an idiot that they're he's got the ability to speak to hunters and farmers. I think, and I don't know where that comes from, but
I'm going to ask him a question about that because his farmer would be an agent, right? I mean, that's the farmer in that industry. My farmers are the publishers, and you've got to be able to speak to them. They're the ones that are going to get the thing done. They're going to go through all of the hard work, the selling, doing all of that. But it's it it's a big process of a lot of different people, you know,
mhm.
in all of these subjects.
Well,
Yeah,
the agent you want to be a hunter,
yeah,
Oh,
and the problem is to get them to focus to be a farmer, because
interesting.
they're always looking for the latest new thing. So they'll pay attention to you for like 2 seconds. Your
Uh-huh.
job is to make them pay attention more often,
yeah,
That's good.
because they've got to go out there and wheel or deal, and they're new stuff, and they've got many clients. So your job is to get them to focus on you as a client and your project. So if they were farmers, truthfully, they wouldn't be good agents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
The
for
producers
me,
would
the
be.
great farmer hunter thing was when I was sitting in a hotel room in London with 3 years of my income tax receipts that I had been schlepping around the world, and I was on location on a movie, not having any free time because I had to get these taxes done that I'd been putting off every year for 3 years, and carrying boxes of receipts.
What?
And the whole room was filled with these receipts. And I finally got them done. But when I came back, that experience was so destructive to me
Mm.
that I found out there was a bookkeeper in Ojai, and I went and I hired her, and I said, I want you to receive all my mail. Here's she's signatory on my bank account,
Wow.
and she receives all my bills, and everything gets paid. And people say, like, how can you abdicate that kind of control to someone? She could rob you. Well, first of all, I know her really well. We've been working together a long time. If she steals from me, basically the world is over. She's not that kind of person. I trust my instincts about her. And everyone tries to give me doubts, but I don't have doubts.
Mm.
Like, I know she's not going to steal from me. In addition, every single bill I have now for the last, umpteen years gets paid on time. And it like changed my life, really. It was like I finally found the value of hiring someone to do what you might call farmer work. She's good at it, I'm not. I pay her to do it, and it saves me money because otherwise I'm paying fines and fees and late fees and, you know.
And loss of time.
Stress.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Honestly, but that no hate on people who pay taxes for a living for other people because it's really stressful. I mean, I don't have any taxes to pay yet, thankfully, but like every single time taxes come up for my dad for a whole week, he's like, nobody talk to me. I gotta just like shut myself up in a little room and then just like handle everything for the business because if I mess up or blah 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 blah, you know?
Yeah.
And honestly, that kind of stress, like how you said, like you just didn't want to do it again. And that's fair because why put yourself through that when you have somebody trusted that you could will just do it
Almost,
for
yeah.
you.
You almost need to. You know, Steve, I don't know if you read, Robert, but Steven Spielberg just came out about 2 years ago. And finally, there was an article. Steven Spielberg comes out and says he's dyslexic. Well, I'm like, duh, known that. I figured that out a long time ago. But he has his secret weapon. If you go back to all of his earlier stuff, Kathleen Kennedy. Kathleen Kennedy is his farmer, and you will see her name below his credits, and you never heard about her. No, I mean you know about her, but most people have no idea who she is. I know her because she used to be married to one of my friends up in Reading.
Really?
And, you know, she became a superstar. You know, but she was his farmer. And go back and look at all those early credits. You'll see her name underneath it. And you say, why is her? Why does he need her? Well, probably, you know, he hasn't, you know, he hasn't said why, but I'm assuming, you know,
She's his
Yeah.
pepper.
she was the one that crossed the T's and dotted the lowercase J's.
Yeah.
It was almost a line out of a Mike Myers movie
Yeah.
with the Wayne's World 2.
Yeah.
Hey guys, it's been an hour. Do we want to talk for 10 more minutes, 20 more minutes, or do we want to start wrapping up?
Well, I've been getting texts. I'm actually working on something that's coming up in 2 weeks, and there's a lot of people challenging me to do things this evening to get together for a Zoom meeting we're having in the morning.
What?
We're going to Las Vegas in about 10 days to film Celine Dion.
Really?
Wow.
Oh.
And the funny part about it is that I consulted on this last year. They filmed the whole movie in London, and it's a matchmaker movie, and Celine Dion plays herself. She's the matchmaker.
Hey.
She's in
Cool.
about 8 or 10 scenes.
Huh.
Because of the pandemic, she couldn't travel.
Mm.
So they
Right.
filmed all of her scenes without her there.
Oh my God.
What?
Are they gonna green screen her in?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we're going to Las Vegas on the 15th of May to shoot her on blue screen for all of her scenes, intimate scenes, dialogue with another person sitting
Oh my
right next to
God.
her.
I hope that goes well. Because
Hey.
some movies they have a really hard time doing that, where
Oh
it
my
looks
God.
kind of
Well,
funky.
I just did it on another movie that came out a few weeks ago called The Unholy.
Oh yeah.
And because of the pandemic, we got shut down and we had to come back and film. And so I designed how to do
Oh,
it,
that's
which
cool.
is why they brought me in on this one too. Because our actors couldn't, after we got shut down, in March, we came back in August or September. But two of the actors, the main actors, couldn't come back. One was in Portugal and one was in Scotland at the time.
And they're done. They're off.
And we were in Boston. So we filmed multiple scenes without the other actors there. And then I supervised remote shoots in Portugal, and then the guy from Scotland came to LA. So I was in New Hampshire supervising a remote shoot in Portugal and then one in LA. And then in the end, we combined all three characters into scenes with other people too.
Oh.
Really? Oh
Yeah.
wow, that's so cool.
Impressive.
Yeah, that's like
Yeah.
modern
You think
technology, man.
Does
Is
it
that
look
gonna be-
real?
Yeah, I looked at the movie. Your movie looks fantastic.
The Unholy.
Yeah. Doesn't look like you guys did that at all. At least not from these
We're gonna have to check it out.
We did some good creatures. You know, the evil woman was a fully synthetic creature.
Really?
She's
Cool.
fully synthetic. She looks totally cool.
So
Oh my
funny.
god.
In some
She's really
scenes-
spooky.
In
I
some
literally
scenes-
have it written down to watch The Unholy, and I didn't even know that was your movie. I've got it.
no, it's well, I don't know if I want to go and
Claim
it's
it.
not. I'm not a big horror film fan, so I can't say whether it's good or bad because I actually never really watched it because I'm
Oh,
too sensitive to watch horror movies.
Me
don't
too.
worry, I'll watch it for you. I love horror movies. I'll tell you if it's
But,
good.
you know, I mean, I've been in horror movies and
Yeah.
worked on a lot of them.
Yes.
That's so strange to not like horror movies and work on them. Is it spooky working on it? Do you
Yeah.
kind of like, yeah?
Kind of creepy. But I'd rather work on a horror movie than like a medical movie.
Oh God, yeah.
I had to
Yeah.
work on like a medical show, and
Too real.
they wanted us to like look at all the, do research, and I didn't want to do that at all.
Bodies go to see
Yeah.
cadavers and
But
Give me the ghosts.
but the
Yeah,
movie
those are so
before The
creepy.
Unholy was Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar, which was a
Shut
complete
up.
comedy.
are you
You
serious?
did that one?
Oh yeah,
Oh my God, it's my favorite favorite movie. I
that
watched
was-
it
you
like
didn't watch
30
the credit?
times. I rented it for $20 for 3 days, and I watched it 30 times in 3 days.
What?
I freaking love that movie. It's one of my new jams, like Wayne's World or Romeo and Michelle's High
Last time
School
you told me to
Reunion.
watch it, Kristen.
I did tell you, but it was $20 to rent it for 3 days, and I was like, I have to. I can't wait any longer.
And it's
Oh my
Barb.
God, that's so cool!
Yeah.
What's the name of
Yeah.
it? Barb and
Barb and Star Go to Vista Del Mar.
unbelievable.
Oh my God, that's so cool! Ah,
Well, we should thank you. We should thank Robert and let him go because he's
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
well, we got that one done under the wire. We were done with it before the pandemic filming, but post-production we had to do during the pandemic.
right. Oh,
And so we could go in and be at the editorial offices and communicate. So, but everything was done like this on Zoom and CineSync, and it was just kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Computer
That is so
generated
cool.
alligators and turtles and
yeah.
That's great.
crabs,
Oh my gosh,
crabs,
that's so
you
cool.
name it. There was a lot of visual effects in that. The mice
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
and
Oh,
Kristen Wiig was fun. And Barb
so
Momolo. I mean,
it took
Annie
me.
Momolo.
It took me like the 5th time watching it through because I didn't want to look it up. I wanted to try and figure it out who the villain was, and it was her.
Tell
And
me,
I was like,
don't
oh my God, duh.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was
Spoils?
another one of the visual effects was
Like,
that she
I
played both parts.
I was like, who? It looks like her, but that's not her. But it looks like her and it sounds like her. And then eventually I gave in and looked it up because it was driving me crazy. I was like, this has to be her sister or something. And it was
like
like,
Yeah.
Tom Cruise playing that agent, playing that producer in
Oh, yeah.
Tropic Thunder.
he
At
dances
first you
at
go,
the end.
Who is that? I know. Oh my God. Anyway, we want
Yeah.
to thank Robert for taking
Yeah.
time
Yay.
from his
Yeah.
busy schedule
Thank you.
to do this, and it's been really. And this has been the best one I think we've done. Most, for, at least I feel like there's a lot of meat in this. So thank you.
Hearty.
A
Yeah.
lot of good information. I hope people watch this and like go like, oh my god, that's how you do XYZ.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's left. That's right.
Ah,
I knew it.
That's
salt
straight
and
ahead.
pepper. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should have you on again sometime when you're not completely swamped. So I can ask you more questions about Barb and Star going to Vista Del Mar. I'm so excited.
We'll do a Barb and Star
I
cast.
could do a
Barb
screen
and Star.
share of all my on-set photos.
Oh my God, I would love that. I would absolutely love
That'd
that.
be a good conclusion.
Yeah.
I told Robert that he should make a movie about all the movies he's made. He's got
Hey,
all
those are
the stuff.
popular nowadays.
They're really popular.
Mm.
I know.
Well, anyway,
know,
thank
there's
you
a lot of-
guys for being here doing this. It was
Yeah.
great.
The time flew by. I thought it was
Yeah.
a brag, though. My goodness.
Talk to you soon.
Okie dokie.
Okay,
for
have
having
a
me.
Very
great
fun meeting you.
weekend.
Bye.
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 You're excused, 'cause you're always late, overweight, and totally